A man arrived at a Japanese airport carrying documents that shouldn't exist. His passport was stamped, official and convincing, except for one detail. The country listed inside it was nowhere on Earth. No maps, no records, no explanation. Tonight, we follow the strange truth behind the man from Taured. He arrived quietly, confidently, as if every detail of his life had been meticulously planned. In October 1959, a man named John Allen Zegrus entered Japan with his wife, carrying a passport from a country that, as far as anyone could tell, did not exist. The document appeared authentic. Embossed seals, stamps from multiple embassies, and even a visa issued by the Japanese embassy in Taipei. On paper, he belonged somewhere. In reality, he belonged nowhere. For months, Zegrus traveled across East Asia, presenting himself as a man of importance. He claimed a life spanning continents, born in the United States, educated in Europe, served as a pilot during World War II, later working in South America, South Korea, and the Middle East. He spoke multiple languages, carried himself with practiced authority, and impressed officials, until the day ambition betrayed him. In January 1960, his confidence collided with reality. Zegrus attempted to cash a 200,000 yen check and a $140 traveler's check at a Japanese branch of Chase Manhattan Bank, and another 100,000 yen at the Japanese Bank of Korea. Bank officers grew suspicious and alerted authorities. When Tokyo Metropolitan Police investigated, they discovered that his passport was a sophisticated forgery, complete with fabricated seals and false travel history. Every country he claimed to have served denied his story. His entire identity was a construct. Zegrus was arrested, interrogated, and eventually sentenced to 1 year in prison for fraud. During the trial, in a final act of desperation, he attempted to take his own life with a piece of glass secretly brought into the court. After serving his sentence, he was deported to Hong Kong, disappearing into anonymity, while his wife was sent back to South Korea. The man who had convinced banks, embassies, and officials of his importance vanished, leaving behind a story that would soon grow far stronger than the truth. The case of John Allen Zegrus should have ended in a courtroom, a footnote in police records. Yet it quickly escaped into the wider world. By July 1960, the British House of Commons had referenced the affair during debates on border security, using his audacious fraud as evidence of how easily passports could be forged. Across the globe, journalists and newspapers seized the story, each retelling bending the facts just slightly, adding intrigue where none existed. In August of that year, the province newspaper in Vancouver ran an article portraying Zegrus not merely as a con man, but as a mysterious international figure. The story framed him as a naturalized Ethiopian and an intelligence agent for Colonel Nasser, claiming his passport had been issued in Taured, the capital of a country south of the Sahara. Maps were said to show this non-existent nation, written in an unfamiliar language. Though the article injected humor and sensationalism, it planted the seeds of a legend that would persist for decades. Soon, authors and researchers began embellishing the tale. Jacques Berger mentioned it in the 1960s, lending a touch of science fiction flair, while Colin Wilson and John Grant included it in the Directory of Possibilities in 1981, misdating the event to 1954 and solidifying Taured in the popular imagination. In these retellings, minor errors compounded, dates shifted, spellings changed, details merged, transforming a 1-year prison sentence for check fraud into a story of impossible geography and enigmatic travel. The story's spread illustrates how human fascination with the unknown reshapes reality. A simple fraud case evolved into something extraordinary. A mysterious man from a country no map could contain. A figure who challenged authority and reason. With each retelling, the line between documented fact and an imaginative speculation blurred, setting the stage for the full legend that would later captivate believers of the paranormal and alternate dimensions. Somewhere along the way, John Allen Zegrus stopped being merely a clever conman and became something else entirely. By the late 20th century, the story had mutated, fusing elements of the real 1959 case with sensationalized accounts that placed the event in 1954 at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. The man from Taured, as he was now called, was no longer a fraudster. He was a traveler from an unknown nation, a figure who seemed to exist outside the rules of geography and time. In these versions, the passport remained authentic looking, but the country, Taured, was nowhere to be found on any map. When officials asked him to locate it, he pointed to the area of Andorra, insisting that it had existed for centuries. He spoke multiple languages fluently, carrying himself with a quiet confidence that baffled airport authorities. To ensure he could not escape, he was placed in a hotel room under guard. And yet, by the following morning, he had vanished. The room was empty. The guards reported no sounds, no footprints, nothing. Even his documents had disappeared, leaving only the enigma behind. This transformation was fueled by repetition, embellishment, and the human desire for mystery. Japanese websites dedicated to paranormal phenomena merge Zegrus' real-life audacity with imagined impossibilities, parallel universes, alternate dimensions, and untraceable movements. Writers added narrative flourishes, a locked room, vanished papers, bewildered officials, creating a story that satisfied the imagination far more than the historical record ever could. By the 2000s, the man from Taured had entered the pantheon of modern folklore. Versions vary wildly. Some emphasize his polite demeanor, others his sudden disappearance. Some suggest portals to other worlds, while others hint at time travel. Yet all share a common thread: the impossibility of the man and his nation, a paradox that draws the curious, the skeptical, and the believers alike into a story that refuses to be pinned down. Once the facts faded, speculation rushed in. The man from Taured became a canvas into which imaginations projected the impossible. Some proposed that he had slipped through a parallel dimension, arriving in Tokyo from a world where Andorra was called Taured. Others suggested time travel, a traveler from the future momentarily intersecting with 1950s Japan. These explanations, fantastical as they seem, highlight the enduring power of a story that resists closure. Authors and researchers fueled the legend. Colin Wilson included the tale in the Directory of Possibilities, treating it as evidence of unexplained phenomena. Writers such as Brian Alaspa and Jeremy Bates used the story to illustrate the thin boundary between reality and the unknown, while online communities propagated it as proof of interdimensional travel. Every retelling, however, strayed further from John Allen Zegrus, the real man, turning a fraud case into an enduring enigma. Skeptics, by contrast, point to far more mundane explanations. Zegrus's forged passport and fabricated biography are well documented, as are the bank fraud attempts that led to his arrest. Translation errors, misread documents, and post-war bureaucratic confusion could easily explain the gaps in the official record. Over decades, sensationalized retellings amplified these inconsistencies into a narrative of impossible geography and unexplained disappearance. Yet the allure remains. The story persists because it combines audacity, mystery, and the unknowable. A man who successfully fooled banks and authorities becomes, in legend, a man who defies reality itself. The fact that so many people still debate his fate, speculate on dimensions, and imagine hidden nations underscores a simple truth. Stories that challenge our understanding of the world endure far longer than the events on which they were originally based. Decades have passed, yet the story of the man from Taured refuses to disappear. Despite the lack of verifiable first-hand accounts, no police logs, and no hotel records confirming the famed disappearance, the legend thrives. Its endurance lies not in proof, but in the tension between what is documented and what the imagination demands. A clever conman once played the world's authorities, and that alone is enough to captivate our curiosity. The story persists online, on forums, in videos, and in books exploring the paranormal. Variations flourish. Some portray him as polite and bewildered, others as confident and enigmatic. Some place him in a parallel dimension, others as a time traveler. Yet every retelling shares the same paradox: a man arriving from a country that does not exist, challenging our sense of reality. Even when stripped of its fantastic layers, the narrative retains a kernel of truth. Zegrus was real, his passport forged, his story audacious. Why does it endure? Humans are drawn to anomalies, to stories that straddle the line between reality and impossibility. The man from Taured embodies that allure, a figure who existed just enough to leave questions behind, a mystery that cannot be fully explained or debunked. Even decades later, the case sparks debate, analysis, and fascination, reminding us of the fragile nature of evidence and the enduring power of narrative. The truth of the man, the passport, and the banks is straightforward. The legend, however, is infinite. And in the end, perhaps the most haunting question is not where he came from, but why stories like his continue to occupy the spaces between fact and imagination, inviting us to wonder, speculate, and question the boundaries of reality itself. The man who walked through Japan's airport carrying a passport from a country that did not exist has long since vanished. But the story he left behind refuses to fade. John Allen Zegrus was real, a skilled conman who fooled banks and authorities with audacious confidence. But over time, fact merged with speculation, and a simple fraud became a legend of impossible nations and vanished travelers. We may never know if the man from Taured was merely clever, or if the echoes of his story hint at something stranger. Parallel dimensions, time slips, or worlds just out of reach. The mystery endures because it straddles the line between reality and imagination, challenging our assumptions and inviting endless debate. If this story chilled your curiosity, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more journeys into the unknown. And as always, don't forget to look beyond the fog.